So far this offseason, the Lions have been remarkably quiet when it's come to spending all the salary cap space that they have. But is there a reason as to why they are doing this, and could it be that it's going to outsmart and shock the NFL? We're going to talk about it, so stay tuned.
What are we? What makes us what we are and what we're going to be? It's grit. It's what we started with last year, guys. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and 3 toes. I will beat your ass.
Can definitely compete with the big dogs.
10-5 end zone touchdown Detroit Lions.
You guys are unbelievable, man. I'm telling you.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions friends, fans, and family members. Welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike. And as always, we're diving on in. So, folks, here's the thing. Obviously, we know that this offseason has not exactly been one of the more active ones for the Detroit Lions. They've made a couple of re-signings. They've had one splash signing in free agency with signing DJ Reed. But for the most part, this offseason has been a remarkably quiet one for the Lions. Now, I know for a lot of Lions fans, that's not at all what they were wanting to have happen this offseason. They were hoping that the Lions were going to make some more noise. They were hoping that they were going to make a big-time trade, a big-time acquisition, something else that was on the defensive line, like a defensive end or an edge rusher, something like that. But as we've come to realize, that's not happening most likely this offseason, at least not right now. Now, why am I having this conversation? Well, the reason I'm having this conversation is because I know for a fact that there are some people that I've talked to, others that I've just, listened to comments and, observations on, the internet. There are people out there that are like, okay, the Lions have like roughly $50-something million worth of cap space right now. They're like damn near in the top 5 as far as teams with cap space with money to burn. So I know that there are people out there that are like, okay, what exactly are the Lions going to do with all this money? Now, outside of the obvious situation of the fact that, well, they're going to need at least part of that money to sign their upcoming draft class, which typically you need about $10 to $12 million anyway, there's also the remaining necessary mouths that they have to feed for this year as far as players that need new deals, either this year immediately or the upcoming year immediately. Now, what are those players? Typically, the three that are Typically, the top 3 that are getting talked about are guys like Hutchinson, Jamo, and Kirby. But you also have a couple of other guys that people are mostly not talking about, but you could probably also throw in there. Guys like Rodrigo, also Josh Pascal. Now, the reason why I'm having this conversation is kind of like to set up a point here. When you take a look at the fact that the Lions have $50 million in cap space, that looks like a lot of damn money. And don't get me wrong, it is a lot of damn money. And when you then take a look at the fact that it's like, okay, we have an upcoming draft class, about $10 to $12 million. Okay, so if we have about $50 million right now, that means we're going to have about 40 to just a little bit under 40 after all that's done. So we still have 40-something million, $38 million worth of play money to work with. So it's like, okay, that's also still a pretty decent amount of money. But then I also know some people are going to be like, well, even if we were to use some of that money to sign, Hutch, Kirby definitely, and then, maybe save off on, signing Jamo and getting Rodrigo on a decent deal, we should still have a decent amount of money to go out and get somebody of, noteworthiness. Okay. Here's the reason why I'm having this conversation. Because pretty much all of the guys that I just mentioned, out of the 5 that, still need to be paid, if they're going to get paid, which I would say 4 of them are pretty much locks. The 5th one is probably an iffy call, which would be Pascal. You have to be smart with what you're doing with that money. And that's probably one of the biggest, I would say, detractions of people that say the Lions just have money to burn. They don't have money to burn. Because you have to realize that what the Lions have right now, you might as well have already spent that money. Pretty much that money, even though it looks available, it's not available. Because let me put this out there for you. When you think about those guys that I just talked about, Hutch, Jamo, Kirby, oh yeah, all of those guys, they're going to get paid. But there's a real conversation that has to be had when we're taking a look at each one of those guys. What is the market value? What is the valuation that you're going to have when you're talking about those guys? Let's start with probably the big one, Hutchinson. If you take a look at Hutch is a guy that could easily reset the edge market because of the fact of just how good he is. And there's a reason I know this. We have to go off of the most recent two guys that just got contracts, Myles Garrett and Max Crosby. Myles Garrett got a 4-year, $160 million contract, averages $40 million a year. Almost $123 million of that $160 million is fully guaranteed. Then you take a look at Crosby, on the other hand. He got a 3-year, $106.5 million contract, 35.5 average per year, with 91.5 of it guaranteed. There's a reason why I did the research on those numbers. The reason why is because it would stand to perfect reason that if Hutch wanted to, he could probably get a bigger contract than both of those guys, as Hutch has been more productive than both of those guys, at least within the last 2 years. And especially if you were to take into full consideration the fact that if Hutch didn't get injured last year, the pace that he was setting in those first 5 games would have been absolutely, unfathomable. So, there's that part of the equation. However, though, there's one more little added nugget we have to throw in there, and that's Trey Hendrickson. Now, I know a lot of people, I wouldn't say as many as before, but I know there are still a lot of Lions fans that are hoping and praying that the Lions might make a move for Trey Hendrickson. But I'm going to be like, hey, you know what? That's a great idea, but the reason that I'm also having this conversation right now is to probably get people to get off that bandwagon, as much as I love it. Trey Hendrickson is looking to get paid, and the Bengals right now are thinking about trying to re-sign him. Well, when Trey Hendrickson gets paid, whether it's by the Bengals or somebody else, whoever the hell it's going to be, that's also going to add yet another factor into this equation when it comes to Hutchinson. Because when you think about it, regardless of how much money all three of these guys get, which obviously Garrett and Crosby have already gotten theirs, Hendrickson's about to get his, regardless of how much they all got, Hutch is going to be due for a massive payday. There is no doubt about this. The mere question that you have to ask yourself, and actually it's questions, is how many years and how much money is he going to get? My bet is likely this. It's probably going to be a 4-year contract, and it's probably going to be between what Myles Garrett and Max Crosby got, but it's probably going to be closer to what Myles Garrett got in terms of total compensation, in terms of like actual total money, and probably also in terms of, average per year and, fully guarantees. The whole point I'm trying to get at here is because of what's going on with the edge market, that deal is going to be a monster deal. It is going to be unbelievable. It's going to be like the Lions just signed yet another quarterback. Because that's in essence what they just did in terms of the cap hit it's going to invoke. So that's obviously Hutchinson. Now, Hutchinson is probably the biggest one that we have to deal with. But the most immediate one we're going to have to deal with is Kirby Joseph. he's likely the first of the three that's going to get his new deal. Because as we know right now, the Lions are currently in contract talks. They're currently negotiating with him and his agent. Now, what is that deal likely going to look like? I couldn't tell you 100%, but according to SpotRack, they're estimating that Kirby is likely going to get a 4-year, $92.8 million deal, averaging just a little bit over $23 million a year. Well, I'm going to tell you this right now. SpotRack can have that nice estimate all they want, but I can tell you this. The numbers are never that damn specific whenever a contract gets signed. It's always some sort of easy round-up number. And usually when you're talking about a contract like what Kirby's likely going to get, again, it's going to be a massive contract. Chances are, because of how good Kirby has been over the years, it wouldn't surprise me if Kirby actually were to reset the freaking, safety market. Because when you're talking about a 4-year deal with a little over $90 million, you're talking about a pretty substantial, piece of change. So for me, I take a look at that estimation, if that's even a word, but that estimate that SpotRack is throwing out there, and I'm like, okay, knowing how Brad Holmes does his business, knowing how free agents have worked with the Lions in the past, I would not at all be surprised if the Lions were able to probably sign a deal for Kirby that's anywhere between a 4-year deal, which has about $85 to $100 million on it, which is going to average anywhere between 21.25 to 25 mil per year. Again, anybody that just knows basic simple math, obviously the salary cap math is a little bit different, but if you're just talking about basic numbers, that's again a massive contract with a daunting cap hit. And that's only the second of the big three, because then the likely last one of the big three that's going to get a new deal is going to be JMO. But still, when you take a look at JMO's deal, it's probably going to be the smallest of the three, but it's still going to be big when it gets signed. Now, why is that the case? Well, again, if you take a look at all the guys I've just talked about, Hutch, Kirby, now you're talking about JMO. Each one of these guys is special for what they do. Hutchinson, there is not another guy like him in the NFL. Kirby is a freaking ball hawk from hell, and JMO is a guy that has very unique, special, rare talent that absolutely helps intensify the explosiveness of this offense. He is a literal stick of dynamite that literally can go off at any moment. And the reason why JMO's in line to get a deal is because when you take a look at the clear progression that he has had in the NFL, not only in terms of his play, his production, and I would say for some people that still have doubts about him, his quote-unquote maturity, the point of the matter is that JMO has proven that he can be an effective, very productive player. Especially considering the fact that last year, the guy had less than 60 receptions, but still put over 1,000 yards. He freaking led the league in freaking receiving average. I think it was 17.3 yards a catch? Dude, that's freaking unheard of. But the point of the matter is that when we're talking about JMO's contract, there's a reason why his contract's probably going to be the most, weird one to figure out, because the wide receiver market is just extremely fluid in terms of value. Deals can range literally quite all over the place. So trying to put an appropriate valuation on JMO is going to be a little bit tricky. But I would again say that JMO's probably going to be able to command an average salary of about anywhere between $15 to $25 million. 15 on the low end, 25 on the middle, and 20 in the middle. And I also expect that he's probably going to sign a 4-year deal. The reason why I keep saying 4 years is because when you take a look at all of the contracts that the Lions have handed out recently, which is, Goff, McNeil, Sewell, all those guys, they were all 4-year contracts. The only exception to that rule was when we signed Decker to a 3-year deal. But my point of the matter is this. If you're talking about a 4-year deal, going to average anywhere between 15 to 25 million a year, you're talking about JMO likely getting a contract that's probably anywhere between 60 to 100 million dollars, and I think it's more likely it's going to probably be closer to 80 million. Now, why do I go such length to describe all this? Here's the reason why. Because it is important to understand just the sheer breadth of freaking numbers that we're talking about here when we understand why Holmes is doing what he's doing. That's the brilliance behind what Holmes is doing. Because I know for some people, they're like, dude, we just have all this money. Why are we not using it? There's a reason why I went through all that explanation with those contracts. When you're taking a look at the potential of signing a $160 million contract, a $100 million contract, and then a potential another $100 million contract, just over 3 guys, you are looking at the potential of spending anywhere between, mid 200s to upper $300 million worth of salary cap over the next 4 years. That is a damn lot of money. So when you take a look at it from that perspective, Holmes' brilliant strategy is to be like, okay, here, I know I've got all these guys that I've got to pay. I know that I've developed these guys. They are a core part of my team. I do not want to lose them. So what is the smartest approach to make sure I can keep the team integrity together, but at the same time, make sure that I can pay these guys that I've developed? Because I'm telling you this right now, if Holmes wanted to, he could go out with that money he has and he could just burn it like he's in Las Vegas, like the freaking Bears and the Pats have been this offseason. Just be absolutely throwing it every which way as if it was like they didn't have a care in the world. But that's not what Holmes is going to do. Holmes ain't that damn stupid. And the reason why I know this and I believe this is because, again, I believe that Holmes is playing the long ball game. Yes, like I said, the Lions have about $50 million in cap space right now. But as I also stated, they're going to need about 10 to 12 million of that for their draft class. And then, okay, now you're roughly about $40 million. So you should still have plenty of money to sign guys like Kirby and Hutch at the very least, and maybe you could stave off JMO for another year if you so decided to do so. So you would still have at least a good chunk of cap. So what's the big deal here? Here's the big deal. Here's the brilliance. I'm telling you this right now. I would not at all be surprised if the reason why Brad Holmes is not going all free willy-nilly with the freaking money this year is because he is planning that money for the future. What do I mean? I think what Brad Holmes is trying to do here is he is trying to conserve as much cap space this year so that way he can then take it, roll it over into 2026, so that way it's like, okay, now that we have all this cap space, we don't have to worry as much when we have to potentially extend JMO if we decide to use the 5th-year option. We don't have to worry as much when we have to extend Gibbs or Campbell or Branch or Laporta. Because, oh, wait a minute, that's right, after this year, we've got all 4 of those guys we got to worry about. And here's the thing. Gibbs is probably going to reset the running back market. Campbell's going to get a good deal for a linebacker. Laporta is going to get a damn fine deal for a tight end. And Branch is already an all-pro safety. He's probably going to get a very similar deal to what Kirby got. So not only do you have more of those deals you have to deal with, funny choice of words there, but those deals are also going to be massive. So think about it. If you've got that much money that you're going to have to spend not only this year, but then next year, you're going to have to make sure you have a damn massive amount of cap space in order to facilitate that. And here's the thing. I know some people are like, well, David, the cap space goes up like damn near $20 million every year. Dude, back the hell up. Even if the salary cap were to continue its crazy rise of $20 million a year, you would still need more money than that cap increase. So in order for the Lions to compensate for that, to kind of in essence create themselves a flotation device, a buoy if you will, I believe they're going to take that expected rise in cap space, But at the same time, they're going to try and roll over as much money as they possibly can this year to ensure it's like, okay, we have as much money as possible going into the 2025 offseason, so for the 2026 year, to make sure that we can sign everybody that we want. Because I can guarantee you this, that's what the Lions are more concerned about right now, other than trying to win a Super Bowl. They're wanting to keep the core tenets of their roster together, and that includes the main guys they've drafted. Hutch, Jamo, Kirby, Rodrigo, freaking Gibbs, Campbell, Laporta, Branch. That's what they're really concerned about. And if you're going to try and make sure you can keep all those guys together, you're going to have cap space. You're going to make sure that you have cap space. And the only way I can see the Lions doing that is one of two ways primarily. You can either, one, as I said, try and be as fiscally smart as you possibly can to make sure the roster is ready to go for this year, but then make sure you have plenty of money to roll over for next year. Or, and I don't buy this one for a second as a likely cause, but I'll just mention anyway. You could try to play the devil's advocate of hoping and praying that you can get enough money saved by having the guys I just mentioned take less than market value. But I'm telling you this right now, that's not likely as much to happen. It makes better sense to make sure you get a moderate deal now instead of lowballing it and then save as much money as you possibly can and then just roll it over into the next year. So for me, the brilliance of this deal, the outsmarting of the deal is rather than freaking blowing their money like everybody wants them to do, like the NFL thinks would make a good story, like all of the naysayers are trying to say the Lions aren't doing enough, it's like, listen, I would much rather Brad Holmes be smart with the money this year by not making a whole bunch of damn moves, so that way it's like, oh, hey, you know what? We don't have to say goodbye to Branch. We don't have to say goodbye to Laporta. We don't have to say goodbye to Campbell. We don't have to say goodbye to Gibbs. We don't have to say goodbye to Jameson. We don't have to say goodbye to Hutch. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Those guys are big-time players. There's a reason why the NFL wants the Lions to spend that money. Because they know if they do, they're screwing themselves over. Because eventually, they're not going to have the money to sign everybody. And the Lions know that. That's why I'm telling you this right now. It's good that Brad Holmes is using his cranium and saying, okay, I know that I need to make sure I have enough money to sign these guys for the future. Otherwise, I'm going to stand to lose them. And if you think that that's not that big a deal, okay, let me ask you this question. How did y'all feel when we lost Ndamukong Suh when we had to choose between Suh, Megatron, and Stafford about, a decade or so ago? I know there are still people to this day that want us to bring back Suh. I would much rather not have to go through all that nonsense again and say, hey, you know what? Instead of just spending willy-nilly on, anybody that we want in free agency or trade market, let's make sure we take care of our own. That makes much more brilliant damn sense. And at the same time, it outsmarts the NFL from trying to outsmart us. Just saying. But anyway, folks, I just wanted to make this episode, so I'm going to end it and say thank you all for watching at another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. Also encourage y'all to do one of these three things. Like, comment, and subscribe. If by chance you subscribed in the past and you forgot to do so at the time, I want to highly encourage y'all, please, make sure you do this. Hit that bell notification icon so that way you guys never miss any more content that I push out. Also want to encourage y'all, please, to share this content with your Lions friends and family members. Share here on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Share anywhere and everywhere you possibly can. And with that being said, to everybody, I hope you all enjoyed the content. I hope I gave you all something to think about. I also hope that, you guys just absolutely enjoyed it. That's truly what I want more so than anything, is that I give you guys enjoyable, knowledgeable content. And especially if it's your first time watching me or you guys have been watching me forever and a day. Also hope everybody's got something in their life that makes them happy, makes them smile. God bless, my friends. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.